I want to talk about civility. In a week where we saw the President of the United States booed at a World Series game, a celebrated Army officer who earned a Purple Heart attacked and called a spy on national TV, and chaos on the House floor after an historic vote on the impeachment inquiry. There is one question that we need to ask this morning. Does civility matter anymore? Joining me to discuss, Reed Galen, an independent political strategist at the Serve America movement, and Jerry Springer, former mayor of Cincinnati, but of course you know him from the Jerry Springer Show. He now has a new show, Judge Jerry. Jerry, what is your reaction to what we saw this week and the role of civility in society right now? Because for us, most of us know you as a guy who hosted a show that featured knockdown, drag-out fights between family members.
Yeah, I used to joke and say that my anger at the president is that he took my show and brought it to the White House. But on a serious note, civility is critical in terms of our norms. And we can't function as a society unless we have norms of how to behave, because you can't pass enough laws to take care of every human interaction. So the norms, if we see our leaders, I mean, people have always been cursing, people always get upset, but our leaders, whether they're government leaders, economic leaders, religious leaders, when they misbehave, when they say the norms don't matter, when they say you can use whatever language you want, anything you can get away with it. If you don't pay taxes, you're smart. Demeaning other people. When they have this behavior, it tells society that we really don't have any norms anymore. There's no appropriate way to behave. We can't have that in the leadership of our country. We can change policies. We'll survive that. But you can't, once we do away with civility in terms of our institutions, we've lost it.
But Jerry, are you saying it's our leaders that need to set the example? Because again, the success of your show in some part was predicated on America's love of the battle. When people were chanting, Jerry, Jerry, it wasn't when the people on your stage were hugging it out.
Look, first of all, our show was about dysfunctional behavior. So obviously, everyone who's going to appear on the show is acting dysfunctionally. That was the point of the show. But no one ever suggested, never did I do a final thought and saying, this is the way you ought to behave. In the contrary, when you behave badly, the consequences inevitably become bad for you. But when you have the President of the United States using language that even on our crazy show we bleep out, then society's in trouble. Do you want to start bleeping out the President of the United States during his speeches? I mean, that's what we're getting to. So you can't compare a crazy television show where you've got people that admittedly are dysfunctional and saying, therefore, it's okay to have an administration that's dysfunctional, that it's okay to have corporate leaders that are dysfunctional, religious leaders that are dysfunctional. No, it's not. Norms are important. Recognizing some people don't follow them, but we still, from the very top parts of our society, we have to say this is an appropriate way to behave,
Reed,
even if there are no laws.
Reed, after the president got booed at the Nats game, you wrote a piece arguing that civility won't fix America.
Well, I think there's a couple things we should remember. One, that the president, got a little bit of what's good for the goose is good for the gander. He was happy he still to this day is happy to enjoy the lock her up chants when he goes to rallies across the country where he is, finds himself in a safe place. I think also, what we should see is, in Jerry's hometown of Cincinnati, we also see what happens when the president is confronted with his own bad behavior, as we saw at Nats Park last weekend, is that he gets very upset. This is a president who must stay within the virtual realm in order to maintain his, his perceived power. And so I think, is civility the answer? I think it's the same thing we've always seen. All of us growing up, we know bullying is wrong, but a lot of us who grew up in a time before this also knew that the best way to get rid of a bully is to stand up to them. And Donald Trump will do whatever he wants to do, however he wants to do it, until Americans both from the local level all the way up into Washington, D.C., and the media and political elite start to stand up to him. And I understand that there is a lot of distaste and a lot of uncomfortableness with the idea of having to sink to his level. I get it. I wish it wasn't possible, but also let's remember that American politics, as George H.W. Bush once said, is not beanbag, nor has it ever been. And so is civility required for governance? Is it required for society? It is. But at the same time, we should not expect that Donald Trump one day is going to wake up and say, you know what, I've been wrong all this time. My entire life I've acted the way I've acted, and I'm sorry. The idea that we can just say, you know what, he's going to do that, but we're not going to stand up to him and the way that he acts and the things that it can do to our institutions, I think is short-sighted and ultimately dangerous.
Then I want to play a moment from this week when Cory Booker was asked about his gun policy compared to Beto O'Rourke's. Here's what he said.
I'm not where Beto is in the way he's been talking about this issue.
Good, because he's crazy.
Well, again, we should watch the way we talk about each other. Seriously, we can't tear the character of people down. We have different beliefs.
He has no problem doing it to me.
Yeah,
I mean, he was very nasty to me about this.
But you and I both know that just because somebody does something to us doesn't mean we show the same energy back to them.
Jerry?
Well, that's true. But, and I agree, just what's said before about the president's behavior, and we have to stand up to him. But the only way we as a society, for example, are going to say that behaving outside the norms is not acceptable is by reflecting that in the next election. Because think about it. If Trump gets reelected, all of a sudden, what is very clear to the whole world and all of America is that the behavior we have witnessed in the last 4 years is totally acceptable. We will never be able to shut that door again. So this election is not so much about Trump. It's about us. What are we willing to accept in our society by our leaders?
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.